Hello, good evening sa inyong lahat, mga Starcada. Ayan, good evening po. Welcome back to my live. This is Emon Star Danny TV. Sang mampanig ka mundo naroon. Ay, good morning, good morning, good evening sa inyong lahat. Ayan, mga OFW natin dyan, mega love shoutout. Sana'y nasa mabuti po kayong kalagayan. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, good evening. At ito na po ang The Deep Probe na interview ng Smni sa mga tumatakbong presidente. Panoorin po natin sabay-sabay. Ayan. The Deep Probe, ha, guys. So, panoorin po natin. Ayan. Smni, pahiram ng inyong video. The Deep Probe.
Kasama sa mga kasama sa survey na decided, kayo ba nakapag-decide na? Nasa inyo po yan. So lahat po magagaling. At maya siguro isa-isayin natin yung mga ibang mga nabanggit nila na kung paano gagawin kung sakali sila mabigyan ng pagkakataon. Pero iba yung dating ngayong gabing ito, lalo na sa side ni Mr. Bumbo. Iba ang dating sa tao, partner.
Oo, sinubaybayan natin, Mike, dahil 5 sila. Nag-umpisa mga pasado 3:00 na.
Yes.
At natapos sa mga ilang minuto na ang nakalipas. Talagang nakita natin, no? Kasi mas madali nating makita yung viewership sa social media compare sa mga nanonood ngayon sa television. At nakita natin, hindi bumababa, partner Mike, eh. Bagkus, tumataas pang so big sabihin nila kahit yung sa pinakauna pa ng mga kandidato, si Calyodi de Guzman, sinundan ni Dr. Jose Montemayor, si Secretary Norberto Gonzales na nag-trending din sa social media dahil sa magaganda rin yung kanyang mga naisagot hanggang kay Secretary Ernesto Abella at dito sa frontrunner na si dating Senador Bongbong Marcos. So kumbaga satisfied, though meron pa ring iba, partner Mike, na medyo nabitin.
Yeah.
Pero isang oras yun, ha? Mga isang oras ang ibinigay talaga sa kanila. Unlike po sa nakalipas nating setup na debate, which is meron lang silang 1 minuto, 1 minute and 30 seconds, minsan 40 seconds. Ngayon, talagang free-flowing, partner Mike, na talagang mailalahad nila. Paano ko ba, ano ba ang gagawin ko para maihatid ko itong plano ko para sa bayan?
Mali yata yung nakuha natin video.
Get the correct item you ordered.
To 6 hours to. Ito yun guys, ito. Panoorin natin. Panoorin natin ito. The Deep Proof. Interview ng Smni. Ayan. Pairam ng video Smni. Kasi Smni hindi naman nagka-copyright. Papairam ng video. Hindi katulad ni EBS. Ka-copyright ka niya.
Partido or dito sa kay VP.
Ang deep probe, aarukin ang kanyang utak at pag-iisip. Kaya malalim ito. Kaya deep probe, malalim na pagsisiyasat. So, in these critical moments of the events of the modern world history, what we need is a president who can decide for the protection and the development of our country.
Ang mga panelists dito ay mga tao, hindi basta-basta sa kanilang profession. Ang mga kasamahan na kilala. Ako ay isa rin akong franchise lawyer since 1991. So, ang katanungan ko ay based din doon sa experience ko bilang isang abogado at bilang isang telecom franchise lawyer. Dito, ang natatanong dito ay may follow-up. Dito, ang natatanong dito ay mga experts, hindi mga host, hindi nagbabasa ng question at walang follow-up. Hindi nagbabasa ng question, naduda rin.
Ito po yung The Deep Probe ng Smni sa mga tumatakbong presidente. 5 lang po yung umatin. Calyode, si BBM, si Abilia, si Gonzales, saka si Montemayor.
Well, as the term suggests, some of these debates, so-called debates and interviews, were really done by non-subject matter experts. If you are not a subject matter expert, you cannot follow through. Do you see? If you are not a subject matter expert, you can't broaden and deepen the subject area. This is not to denigrate journalism. This is simply to be partial to subject matter experts.
Pero sa Smni, napagkaisahan natin na may integridad tayo, may kredibilidad, lalo na sa pagsasalita ng katotohanan, hindi para magwasak sa ating bansa, kundi upang ito ay tayo at ang ating mga kababayan ay magkaroon muli ng hustisya sa kanilang mga balitang naririnig at ito ay nagpapatayo sa ating bansang Pilipinas na mahal natin. Kaya para sa Pilipinas nating mahal, iaalay natin ang lahat ng mga papuri. At sa ating dakilang Ama, ating Panginoong Jesucristo na siyang gumagabay sa ating lahat upang ang katotohanan at ang justisya ay magkaroon ng puwang sa ating lipunan. Iyan ang pakay ng Smni.
Media Network International brings you the Deep Probe, the SMNI Presidential Candidates Interview. Live from Okada, Manila, the best in
Okada,
radio
Manila.
in the Philippines.
Ang ganda ng Okada, Manila.
Mabuhay Pilipinas! Magandang hapon po sa ating mga kababayan sa buong bansa at sa buong mundo. It's good to be back. Live na live po tayo ngayon sa Okada, Manila. Welcome to the Deep Probe, the SMNI Presidential Candidates Interview. Hatid sa inyo ng Sunshine Media Network International. Katuwang ang ALB Events International at The Manila Times. Ako po, si MJ Montihar.
Ako naman si Ruth Hamilton. Tuloy-tuloy pa rin po ang paghahatid sa inyo ng SMNI ng isang malaman at makabuluhang mga talakayan sa mga usaping dapat malaman ng bayan. At matapos ngang tangkilikin ng milyong-milyon nating mga kababayan ng serye ng SMNI debates mula sa presidential debate hanggang sa dalawang magkasunod na senatorial debates, ngayong araw naman MJ ay matutunghayan ng sambayan ng Pilipino ang mas pinalalim at mas makabuluhang SMNI presidential interviews.
Ruth, kumpara sa mga naunang debate ng SMNI kung saan harapan ang mga presidential candidate sa pagbabanggaan ng kanilang mga tugon sa iba't ibang issue ng bansa, ngayon naman sa The Deep Probe ay matutunghayan natin ang kakaibang tanungan at talakayan ng bawat isang kandidato kasama ang ating panel of experts.
So mga kababayan, medyo mas relax ang setup natin ngayon. Pero sa ganitong format,
Tanungan.
mas mapapalalim ng bawat
Ayan,
kandidato ang kani-kanilang paliwanag sa kanilang mga programa.
Tama ka dyan, Ruth. Kaya live
Ito-
na live tayo napapanood
ito po yung flex
via
natin
Free
ngayon,
TV,
ang
Channel
The
39,
Deep Probe.
sa Digital TV, SMNI News
Deep
Channel,
Probe.
sa Sky Cable, Signal, at iba pa mga cable TV affiliates nationwide. Napakikinggan din tayo sa 17 Sunshine radio stations sa buong bansa at sa worldwide audience through the internet gamit ang mga social media platform ng SMNI sa YouTube at Facebook.
And of course, before anything else, we would like to recognize and thank the Honorary Chairman of SMNI, Reverend Dr. Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy. Thank you, Pastor, for this great honor and privilege once again na maghahatid po tayo sa
Ruth
ating mga kababayan ng
Hamilton,
isang dekalibreng
Si Ruth
presidential
Hamilton,
interviews
anchor
na
ng
magmumulat sa ating mga
SMNI.
kababayan kung sino ba talaga ang karapat-dapat na mamuno
Wala yung
sa
apat
ating
dito.
bansa. Mapalad
Ay, lima
muli tayo,
pala. Wala
MJ.
yung lima.
Dahil makakasama natin ang mga
Wala yung
batikang
lima.
panelists mula sa iba't ibang larangan
Naduwag sila.
para sukatin at kilatisin ang mga pangakong
Natakot
pagbabago
sila kay
ng mga nagnanais
Professor
maging
Carlos.
pangulo ng ating bansa.
Pero bago yan, Ruth, sino-sino nga ba ang mga kumasa sa hamon ngayon
Natakot
ng
sila
SMNI
kay-
presidential interviews? 5 sa 10 kumakandidato sa
natakot sila kay
pagkapangulo
Professor
ang
Carlos.
tumanggap at makakasama natin sila live ngayong hapon. Ang labor leader na si Calyote de Guzman
Bakit kaya sila
ng
natakot?
Partido Lakas ng Masa, Dr. Jose Montemayor Jr. ng Democratic Party of the Philippines, former Defense Chief Norberto Gonzales, mula naman sa Partido Demokratiko Sosyalista ng Pilipinas, former Presidential Spokesman Ernie Abella bilang independent candidate at ang front-runner ngayon mula sa Partido Federal ng Pilipinas, Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr.
Ipinapaalam po namin na lahat ng presidential candidates ngayong halalan ay inimbitahan po ng SMNI at sila pong 5 ang matatapang na handang tumugon sa mabibigat na isyong ibabato sa kanila ng ating batikang panelist na handang-handa rin busisiin ang kanilang mga programa para sa bayan.
Bago po tayo o bago ang lahat, let's all stand for our prayer to be led by Franco Baranda and to be followed by the singing of the Philippine National Anthem to be led by Miss Janine Cruz.
Let us all pray.
Makaka-
Almighty Father, we're thankful and grateful for allowing us to be gathered here once again in this momentous event that will give all Filipino a chance to know more about aspiring candidates that are running for the highest position in the country. We pray that its meeting of minds and sharing of talents through this presidential candidate interview will give enlightenment for all. And for the participants who are here tonight, may each one build respect for one another, broaden our thinking, guide our thoughts, discussions, and ideas as we seek to work together for the good of our people and country. Bless the organizers, panelists, and everyone for their cooperation and unity in making this event a remarkable one. We know we would not have succeeded without you. Bless this event tonight, all those present, as well as those joining us through TV and on live stream, and may each one make every moment count. All this we ask in your mighty name. Amen.
Mute natin kasi mas-CPR tayo sa Bayang Magili. Ang ating lupang hiniran. CPR yan, lupang hiniran. So ito yung na-ipiflex natin guys, yung the deep probe ng SMNI. Interview ng tumatakbong presidente. Bali ang kumasa dyan, 5. At yung 5 ay absent. Natakot sila kay Professor Carlos. Baka hindi kakayanin yung mga tanungan. Wala dyan si Lenlen, si Isko, si Manny, si Lacson, sa ating sino ba yung isa? Mangundato ba yun? Mangundato. Ang nandyan ang umatin po si PBM, si dating Secretary Abella, si dating Secretary Gonzales, si Calyode, saka si Montemayor, Dr. Montemayor. Ayan, tapos na.
Malalimang discussion, Ruth, kasama ang ating mga presidential candidates. Ano nga ba ang trabaho at kapangyarihan ng isang Pangulo ng Pilipinas? Bakit napakahalaga na makilala natin ang bawat kandidato? At gaano nga ba kalawak at kabigat ang obligasyon ng isang punong ehekutibo ayon sa ating konstitusyon? Alamin natin yan sa video na ito.
Irish Rookie. Yan. Shout out kay Irish.
Sa 10 kandidatong naglalaban-laban sa posisyon ng pagkapangulo, isa lamang ang papalarin na humawak sa pinakamakapangyarihang posisyon. Ito ay kapag nakuha niya ang mayorya sa boto ng mga Pilipino ngayong Mayo 9. Ang Pangulo ng Pilipinas ay maaari lamang manilbihan sa loob ng isang termino na katumbas ng 6 na taon at hindi na pahihintulutang maihalal muli. Magsisimula ang kanyang termino ng tanghali ng ika-30 araw ng Hunyo pagkatapos isagawa ang eleksyon. Ang Pangulo ng Pilipinas ay magsisilbing puno ng Estado, puno ng pamahalaan at punong komandante ng Sandatahang Lakas ng Pilipinas. Ang isang naghahangad na maging Pangulo ay dapat likas na ipinanganak na Pilipino, isang rehistradong botante, nakababasa at nakasusulat, 40 taong gulang sa araw ng halalan, nakapanirahan sa bansa ng 10 taon bago ang halalan. Bilang Pangulo, siya ay may kapangyarihang pamahalaan ang ehekutibong sangay. Pinamamahalaan niya rin ang lahat ng ehekutibong kagawaran, kawanihan at tanggapan. Kasama na rito ang pagbabago ng estruktura at paghirang ng mga pinuno para sa mga nabanggit. Ikalawa, kapangyarihan na gumawa ng mga ordinansa. Ang isang halal na Pangulo ay may kapangyarihang maglabas ng mga halaing tagapagpaganap na kasangkapan upang maging mas epektibo ang mga patakaran at programa ng administrasyon. May 6 na executive issuance na maaaring ilabas ang Pangulo. Ito ay ang Executive Order, Administrative Order, Proclamations, Memorandum Orders, Memorandum Circular, General o Special Orders.
Executive Order,
Kapangyarihan dumaan sa mga dayuhan. Ang Pangulo ay may kapangyarihang magpaalis ng mga dayuhan mula sa bansa pagkatapos idaan sa wastong proseso. Siya ay may kapangyarihan ding baguhin ang estado ng isang dayuhan
Thank you,
nakasaad
Irish.
sa batas.
Okay.
Ika-4, kapangyarihan ng eminent domain, SG, pagre-reserba ng lupa at pagbawi ng yamang mula sa masasama. Ang Pangulo ng Pilipinas ay may kapangyarihang kunin ng may makatarungang bayad ng pribadong ari-arian para sa pambayang pangangailangan. Gayon din ang bawiin ang mga ari-ariang kinamkam ng mga pinuno at taga-suporta ng nakaraang rehimen at pangalagaan ang interes ng mga mamamayan sa paghawak ng mga ari-ariang ito. Ikalima, kapangyarihang maghirang sa posisyon. Maaaring magtalaga ang Pangulo ng mga opisyal ng pamahalaan ng Pilipinas ayon sa nakasaad sa konstitusyon at mga batas ng bansa. Gayunpaman, maaaring kailanganin ng ilan sa mga paghirang na ito ang pagsang-ayon ng Committee on Appointment o Komisyon sa Paghirang. Ika-6, kapangyarihang pangasiwaan ng mga pamahalaang lokal. May ata sa Pangulo bilang punong ehekutibo na pangasiwaan ang mga pamahalaang lokal sa bansa. Bukod sa mga nabanggit, ang Pangulo ay maaari ring magpatupad ng mga kapangyarihang nakasaad sa konstitusyon at batas. Ganyan kabigat at kalawak ang responsibilidad ng isang Pangulo ng Pilipinas. At ding malapit nang matapos ang administrasyon ni Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte, muling pipili ang taong bayan kung sino ang magpapatuloy sa pagbabagong nasimulan. Sino ang may tapang na tumangan para maging Pangulo ng mamamayang Pilipino.
Bigay na natin ang pagkakataon sa ating SMNI D-Probe host na siya ring nagsilbing moderator sa ating SMNI debates.
Walang iba kundi ang batikang abogado at broadcaster, attorney Karen Jimeno.
Thank you, MJ and Ruth. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back here at Okada with all of you. Marami po kaming natanggap na request for a part 2 of the presidential debate. Bilang pagtugon sa inyong hiling, we bring to you the SMNI Deep Probe, the presidential interviews. Today's event is meant to help the Filipino people get a deeper understanding of the presidential candidates by having them face our expert panel. So how is the Deep Probe different from the debates? Each of our presidential candidates will be given a chance to sit down and talk with our panelists. Compared to debates where candidates are under time pressure and unable to fully elaborate their answers, candidates will be facing an in-depth scrutiny by the panel. Compared to a debate, the Deep Probe is a discussion structured around a candidate's vision for the country. Panelists will ask candidates questions based on their programs of government. Candidates will also be addressing questions on pressing issues that we face today, from international relations, domestic affairs, national security, post-COVID impacts, employment, and other issues. This is a free-flowing exchange triggered by inquiries from the panel, just like a job interview. But think of this as a job interview for the highest position in our country. So without further ado, let me welcome our panelists. They are from different fields of expertise. First, we have political scientist and University of the Philippines professor, Dr. Clarita Carlos. An international relations and international diplomatic negotiations and subjects teacher, and an anchor of SMNI Statescraft, newly arrived from the Netherlands, Ms. Sas Rogando Sasot. Also joining us tonight is telecommunication and franchise lawyer and seasoned lawmaker, Attorney Rolex Suplico. And last but not the least, the Manila Times CEO and Chairman, Dante Klink-Ang II. Ladies and gentlemen, sila po ang ating expert panelists for today. At ngayon, makakasama na natin ang unang presidential candidate na sasalang sa The Deep Probe. Isa sa labor leader na isusulong ang aniyay makamasang ekonomiya, reforma sa politika at tunay na panlipunang kaunlaran. Atin siyang kilalanin.
Isang lider na hinubog ng karanasan bilang isang pinuno at miyembro ng iba't ibang grupo ng mga manggagawa sa higit 3 dekada. Makamasang ekonomiya, reforma sa politika at tunay na panlipunang kaunlaran ang kanyang bitbit na plataforma ngayong halalan.
Oblehin
Kalyode.
pondong ilalaan natin para sa pagpapaunlad ng ating agrikultura, ng ating mga magsasaka, ng ating mga mangingisda. Ano man, national, local, pistok, ay dapat nating pasukin para matapos na itong ating problema ng digmaan sa loob ng ating bansa. Kaya dapat natin resolbahin yung problema ng kahirapan. Resolbahin natin ang inustisya. Ipatupad natin yung tunay na reforma sa lupa.
Mula sa Partido Lakas ng Masa, tumatakbong Pangulo, Calyode de Guzman.
Si Calyode de Guzman.
Maaari na po kayong umupo, Calyode. At ngayon, simulan na natin ang The Deep Probe. To our panelists, you have the floor. Please take it away from here.
Magandang hapon, Kalyodi. Nagkita na naman tayo. Nagkita tayo nung unang round. And siguro ako yung mag-shoot ng first question. Pero ito kasi ay, this is a non-belligerent format. Sana nga dito kakatabi namin eh. Kaya lang hindi maiba yung format eh. Miski anong pagsisip-sip ko sa SMNI, ayaw niyang bagyuhin. No? Because we wanted the candidates to really sit with us. So, siguro, bago ko i-shoot yung, kasi ito yung binigay mo dito sa SMNI kung ano yung gusto mong gawin kung ikaw ay maging Chief Executive sa July, ay siguro gusto ko munang makilala ka na more intimately, no? Bakit mo ba naisipang mag-run for Chief Executive?
Mahaba na ako nakikipaglaban. Marami kaming kahilingan para sa sektor ng mga manggagawa. At mula sa sektor ng mga manggagawa, pati sa mga driver, pati sa mga magkasaka, yung mga kahilingan niya, for 36 years, wala naman nakikinig sa gobyerno, sa mga nagpalit-palit. Hingi namin ng tunay na reforma sa lupa, hindi naman ipapatupad, kontraktualisasyon, dapat itigil, maging regular sa trabaho ng mga manggagawa, wala naman nakikinig, sahod ng mga manggagawa, itaas, itaas yung sahod ng mga manggagawa sa probinsya, kapantay na sa Metro Manila, wala rin. Yung sektor ng serbisyo, panawagan namin, dapat yan ay maging hawak ng gobyerno at maging serbisyo, wala din. Yung oil deregulation law, ang tagal na namin tinapanawagan yan na dapat magkaroon ng regulasyon at hindi deregulated yung presyo ng petrolyo, pero wala rin nakikinig. Yung VAT, sabi namin nagpapahirap yan sa mga mamayan, alisin natin at ilipat natin yung ating taxation doon sa kumikita at huwag doon sa ating mamayan. Kasi regressive sa ating konstitusyon, dapat ay progressive. Wala rin nakikinig. Kaya sabi ko, baka mas maganda, tumakbo na ako at medyo mabigat, pero subukan natin na tumakbo.
Sige, salamat.
Professor Carlos, sususugan ko lang yung question po ninyo. Kasi, I read your profile at alam naman po natin na kayo po ay nanggaling sa pagiging aktivista. At ang pinaglalaban niyo po ay yung mga interest po ng mga sektor na inyong mga nabanggit. Pero po, pag kayo po ay naging Pangulo ng Pilipinas, hindi lang po isang sektor ang inyong pamumunuan, kundi iba't ibang sektor na may kanya-kanyang interes. Ngayon, kung kayo po ay naging Pangulo ng Pilipinas, paano niyo po babalansehin ang iba't ibang interes na to, katulad po ng interes ng mga manggagawa at interes po ng mga kapitalista?
Una, klaruhin ko lang, pag sinabi kong manggagawa, ang ibig naming sabihin dyan ay nakapatungkol yan doon sa lahat ng mga taong obligadong magtrabaho para mabuhay. That's labor, that's worker. Ngayon doon sa mga kapitalista, may pagbabalanse rin kami dahil may inisip kami na pagtulong doon sa mga maliliit na negosyante, yung mga micro, small, and medium enterprises. Pero doon sa mga kartel, sa mga monopolyo, talagang hindi ko gusto yung kailang mga pamaraan ng pagninegosyo na ginagamit, yung kanyang kalamangan sa finansya, and at the same time, yung kailang political connection para itulak yung kailang mga business interest. Doon ako hindi sang-ayon. At lalo na doon sa mga negosyante na hindi nila tinuturing yung mga manggagawa na partners. Dapat ay partner sila. At hindi dapat kinokontraktual. Hindi dapat masyadong mababa ang sahod ng mga manggagawa kumpara doon sa living wage. Napakalayo. At maraming yung karapatan niyang mag-union na pinaka-basic sa ating konstitusyon, ayaw ipinatupad, ipinagkakait. Yun lang naman yun ang aming pagkakaiba. Nakapatungkol ako doon sa mga cartel, big businesses, at saka itong mga monopolyo.
Ano yung sinusulong nyo mga pagbabago? Yung pagtanggal ng rice tarification law, pagtanggal ng VAT, at yung mga iba pa. Medyo kakaiba. Meron ba kayong nakikitang ibang bayan o bansa na gusto nyo maging modelo para sa Pilipinas?
Hindi.
Para lang po mas maintindihan namin kung ano po yung vision nyo na gusto para sa bayan natin.
Wala akong model eh. Wala akong model na pinagkukuhanan. Ang alam ko lang, nagrereklamo yung mga magsasaka doon sa rice tarification law. Pinayagan yung mga big business, yung mga kartel ng bigas na mag-import ng unlimited na bigas, kaya tumambak dito sa ating bansa, sa mga merkado, na nagdulot ng di mabenta yung aning palay ng ating mga magsasaka. At para mabili, binibili sa halagang halos katumbas lamang kung magkano ang ginastos para ma-produce yung isang kilong palay. Na parang kung 14 pesos ang gastos sa pag-produce na isang kilong palay, halos ganoon din bibilhin. Kaya ang proposal namin, at marami sa mga magsasaka ang nagsasabi na dapat talaga i-refill at magkaroon ng panibagong roadmap na gagawin ng gobyerno para protektado yung ating mga magsasaka. Kawawa yung 11 million na ating mga magsasaka dito sa rice tarification law.
I mean this in the most respectful way. Kaya ako po tinatanong kasi talagang gusto ko pong maintindihan. Pero sa paningin ko po, wala po talagang mga bayan na talagang tila sasang-ayon doon sa mga gusto nyo mangyari sa Pilipinas. Kaya po, medyo po, kaya ko rin po gusto, meron po ba akong hindi naintindihan o baka po mas maganda tanongin, meron po bang hindi naintindihan yung mga boboto ngayong May? Kasi po, patinignan natin yung mga surveys, parang hindi pa po tumatalab yung gusto nyo mangyari. So ano po bang nami-miss namin?
Kung doon sa hindi tumatalab, no? Hindi tumatalab. Ako may factor yan, hindi ako kilala. Kumpara doon sa aking mga kalaban na talagang mga sikat. Pangalawa, hindi ako yung traditional na mga politiko na bago tumakbo ay kinakailangan may 3 to 5 billion na pondong uubusin sa kampanya. Wala ako noon. Kaya ang talagang gamit ko lang ay yung plataforma ko na para sa mga magsasaka, para sa mga manggagawa, para sa ating mga masang Pilipino. Yun lang inaasahan ko na mag-sink in sa isipan nila na yung aking plataforma ay ito yung laban nilang matagal na, dekada-dekada. At mag-isip nila yan bago ang araw ng botohan. Yun ang aking inaasahan. Kasi hindi ko kaya yung traditional na kampanya nung mga dati na at saka ng mga kalaban ko ngayon. Hindi natin kaya yun. At kaya sabi ko nga, bagong politika yung aking dala.
Kalyote, mayong hapon.
Maayong hapon din.
So, hindi po kayo umaasa na manalo kayo. Umaasa kayo na ma-deliver nyo yung mensahe nyo.
Umaasa ako na manalo. Na bago mag-eleksyon, ulitin ko, bago mag-eleksyon, mag-sink in sa isip ng mga manggagawa, ng mga magsasaka, ng mga maralita, ng mga driver, ng mga kababaihan, yung aking plataforma ay laban nila. Na dekada-dekada nilang laban. Nang sa ganun, maalaala nila ako bago mag-eleksyon at pangalan ko ang isulat nila sa balota.
Alam niyo po, nung Marso 14, nag-release ang Pulse Asia ng results. Alam niyo po yun, no?
Oo.
Na kayo po yung 1%.
Okay.
Ano, 0.1%.
Okay.
So, sinasabi ko lang yung real politics, di ba? Tanong ko po, no, sa mundo na gusto niyo, no, meron bang lugar doon ang mga kapitalista?
Meron.
Pwede po pag-explain?
Oo. Actually, kami ni Walden, sa program, naglaan kami ng 125 billion in support doon sa mga micro, small, and medium enterprises. Para nang sa ganun, makatulong yon para sa pagbangon o pagbawi ng mga manggagawang nawala ng trabaho. And at the same time, ma-develop ulit, mapaunlad nila yung sistema ng kanilang pagninegosyo at tutulong yung gobyerno sa marketing para sa pagpapaunlad ng kanilang sale. And at the same time, kakatulungin din namin sila doon sa pagbubukas ng ating manufaktura na itinigil yan eh. Nung magkaroon ng structural adjustment program ang ating gobyerno mula kay Marcos, kay Cory, itinigil yan eh, yung manufacturing. Kaya nawala yung sapatos, nawala yung garment, nawala yung bakal natin. Kakatulungin natin sila para sa pagbangon ng ating ekonomiya. Magkaroon tayo ng sarili nating industriya para silang gagawa ng mga produktong o mga yaring produkto na kailangan natin.
Paano po mga big time na kapitalista, mga bilyonaryo, meron din pa silang lugar doon sa...
Meron din. At ang pakiusap natin sa kanila, huwag naman masyadong mapagsamantala. Ipakilala natin na dapat yung mga manggagawa ituring na partner batay doon sa ating konstitusyon, batay sa ating labor code, na nandun yung nakasulat na klaro yung mga karapatan. Na dapat yung mga manggagawa ay may just share sa fruit of production. Huwag nating gawing contractual yung ating mga manggagawa at ipasa yung responsibilidad niya doon sa mga manpower agency. Yun ang nangyayari ngayon eh. Dapat nakuin nila yung responsibilidad nila sa workers nila. Kasi ang ginagawa nila, ipinapasa sa manpower agency. At ang sabi, alam mo, hindi kita manggagawa. Ikaw ay manggagawa ng manpower agency. Doon ka manghingi. Dapat sana, yung mga negosyanteng dapat kikilala sa konstitusyon, kikilala sa labor code, at kikilala sa mga manggagawa bilang puwersa sa development ng ating bansa at puwersa at katuwang niya sa pagpapaunlad ng negosyo niya.
Pero hindi sila pinagbabawalan kumita.
Ay, hindi pagbabawalan. Okay. Dapat naman. Wala na yun. Iba na yun. hindi na negosyo yun.
Ano po ba yung datos ninyo sa estado ng manufacturing sector? Kasi po yung nabasa ko po recently, yung latest manufacturing index po is about 52%. And anything po above 50% means that there's growth po in the manufacturing sector. So, ayon po sa datos na yun, para po may growth. Pero sa tingin nyo, as sinasabi nyo, it's stagnant. Tama po ba?
Baka magkaiba tayo ng data. Sir, ang alam ko sa pag-manufacturing, sa eksaktong manufacturing, halos nasa 3% na lang eh. Yung mga ng buong manufacturing ng industry, halos nasa 3% na lang. Malayong-malayo na ito noong panahon ng 1960s na number 2 tayo sa Asia, number 2 tayo sa Singapore, at mas malamang tayo sa China, lamang tayo sa Taiwan, lamang tayo sa South Korea. Yung ganong sistema ng negosyo, ang magandang pagsimulan. Noong panahong yon, regularization ang patakaran ng gobyerno. At ang sahod ng mga manggagawa, kung magkano dito sa Metro Manila, ganon din sa probinsya. At gumugulong ang ating industriya noon. Yung ating bakal, yung ating sapatos, yung ating garment, umaandar. Kaya ganun ang ating ekonomiya. Pero ang problem, nung magkaroon ng structural adjustment program na inaprubahan ng ating gobyerno, nagbukas yung ating ekonomiya, kaya nawasak yung ating agriculture, nawasak yung ating industriya. At tayo ngayon ay pinapaasa na lang sa produktong dayuhan, yung mga yaring produkto, pinapaasa lang tayo, binabibili,
And at the same time, hindi lang yung yaring produkto, pati agricultural products, sibuyas, bawang, luya, pumapasok na rin.
Kalori, kaya ako po tatanong kanina, ano po yung modelo ninyo? Ano po ba yung gusto nyong gayahin? Kasi po sa lahat po ng nakikita ko mga bansa, lahat po sila favors liberalization, nagbubukas po sila, even the socialist countries po. At alam naman po natin yung China, but even Vietnam, they adopted yung Doi Moi policy in 1990s. Ito nga po yung nagpapaunlad sa Vietnam ngayon. At sabi nga po nila, baka maunahan pa ang Pilipinas. So, pati po yung mga North Korea na gusto talagang na-isolated po because of economic sanctions, gusto rin magbukas. Pero kayo po, parang tila against the grain po ang gusto nyo mangyari. Tama po ba or mali?
Hindi naman ako nag-iisip ng North Korea. Hindi. Hindi ako nag-iisip ng North Korea. Pero wala pa namang model eh. Wala akong makitang parang model na bansa. Pero may mga magaganda na mapupulot ka na mga program nila sa economic. At ako ang iniisip ko lang ay dito sa ating bansa na itong bagay na mga nakasisira sa ating industriya tulad ng mga sabi ko nga yung structural adjustment program, yung mga agreement natin sa WTO at even itong gustong papirmahan na RCEP, mawawasak talaga ang ating industriya at saka itong ating agrikultura dahil 1,700 yata na tariff line ang bubuksan ulit. Talagang ang lahat ng pangangailangan natin bilang Pilipino ay talagang paasahan tayo sa import. Ang problem diyan, pagka sa importation, mahal eh. Tapos mag-i-export tayo ng mga raw materials natin, halimbawa or metal na napakamura sa China. Tapos bibili tayo ng bakal na napakamahal. Laging deficit tayo sa trade. At dahil deficit tayo sa trade, mangungutang tayo. Kaya nababaon tayo sa utang. Hindi na tayo makakaahon nito pagka nagpatuloy ang ganyang sistema ng ekonomiya natin. Hindi tayo makakaahon. Malulubog tayo sa utang at babagsak ang ating sariling ekonomiya.
Kalori, you mentioned yung utang. And that's been discussed in some of the debates. In fact, I think po dun sa pinuntahan yung CNN debate, sinabing 12 trillion na po yata. Pero po, pag titingnan nyo po yung national debt natin, tila po hindi naman po ganun kasama kasi it's only 60% po of GDP. In fact, mas mataas pa nga po ng time ni Mrs. Arroyo, was 63% of GDP. And time po nung latter part po ni President Cory Aquino, beginning part po of the term of President Fidel Ramos, mas mataas po yung debt to GDP ratio at the time. Pag tinignan nyo na po ng ibang metric naman po, per capita GDP, hindi naman po, even at 12 trillion, hindi po nalala yung per capita debt po natin sa nakikita po natin in Vietnam, Thailand, and others. So parang hindi po ba kaya overblown or politicized itong issue na ito?
Di naman. Mukhang ang mga economists naman ay nagkakasundo na yung ilabot nating 60% na ng ating GDP ay isang delikado na yan. Hindi na maganda. Dapat sana bilo pa. Pero umabot na eh. Pero even though na hindi pa umaabot, yan na yung ating history. History na natin na parang mula kay Marcos, kay Cory, lahat yan, walang exempted. Nanangutang. Sa panahon lang yata ni Noynoy medyo nagbago. Pero problem yun eh. Hindi dapat tayong lahat ng ating pag-unlad at gagastusin puro utang. Dahil pagka nangutang ka, hindi lang naman yung interest ang babayaran mo. Ang dami mga surcharges. Tapos ang dami mga kondisyones na ini-impose ng mga financial institution na nagpapautang sa atin. Sige.
Kasi, sorry, papasensya po.
Sige.
Kasi po yung Singapore, for instance, yung debt to GDP ratio po nila is 123%, if I'm not mistaken. More than 120% po. Yung sa Japan, yung debt to GDP ratio na po nila is more than 200%. Even in nominal terms po, yung face value ng pera, mas malalaki pa po yung utang ng mga ibang bansa. So kung titingnan niyo po yung sa atin, di pa tila po mas manageable itong sitwasyon na ito, not only po in historical terms, but compared po to other countries in...
Financially, pwedeng sabihin, Pero pag tinignan natin sa baba, yung ating mga mamamayan, na nasa 27 o 25% na ang nakakaranas ng gutom, yung involuntary na paggugutom. May meron tayong 5 million na mga 4 to 5 million na mga kabataan na hindi nakapag-aaral. Meron tayong 6.7 million na mga bahay na backlog sa atin sa housing. Baka mas magandang yan ang tingnan, yung kalagayan ng ating mamayan kaysa sa mga datos na pinipresent natin. Dahil may ibang katangian yung kalugaran ng ating bansa kumpara sa ibang bansa. Kaya baka mas maganda mag-focus sa kalagayan ng ating mga manggagawa na talagang hirap na hirap sila.
Ay, sabi niyo nga po kanina, gusto niyo magbigay ng something like 100 billion at
25.
subsequent sa mga SMEs. Tama po ba? So very similar po sa sinasabi ni Vice President Robredo na gusto niya magbigay ng similar amount to micro, small, medium
150 yata
enterprises.
sila.
Pero po, ang tanong ko lang po, there is Republic Act 9501. Ito po yung Magna Carta for Micro, Small, and Medium-Sized Enterprises that requires po banks to set aside 8 or 10% of their total loanable funds to MSMEs. That's about 8 trillion pesos po. But sa ngayon po, only 5% of the loanable amounts are given out, and that's already 400 plus billion. Mas malaki po sa binabanggit nyo ngayon. Di ba, as President, mas magandang ipatupad na lang yung Magna Carta for MSMEs kasi po magbigay pa tayo ng 100 billion subsidy na binabanggit nyo po?
Kasi yung 150 billion na,
Pagkatapos
125
ni
billion na
Calio,
ay hindi lang doon sa pagbangon, kundi
move tayo
gagamitin
kay,
natin sila doon sa
BBM.
pagbubukas ng ating manufaktura. At ang kakatuwingan natin
Gusto
ay yung mga
mapakinggan
MSME. Kasi sa aming
Untitled
experience,
BBM.
mas marami pang mga negosyante nasa mga maliliit, yung may puso ba talaga para sa pagpapaunlad ng bayan. Hindi lang yung parang kabig lang ng kabig. Nag-iisip na sa kapakanan ng mga magagawa at ng bayan. Yun ang gusto namin patuwangin para doon sa pagbubukas ng ating sariling manufaktura at industriya na gagawa ng produktong ating kailangan para hindi na tayo masyadong nag-i-import.
Kaya nga po, di patupad na lang yung batas and automatically you have 800 billion pesos for MSMEs. Di po mas
Pwede natin idagdag yun. Pwede natin idagdag para na sa ganun, makaka-recover na sila sa epekto nitong pandemic and at the same time, makakatulong tayo sa kanila para sa pagtuwang.
Maganda sana tumakbo na lang senador.
Sa pagtuwang doon sa pagbubukas ng ating sariling industriya.
Sa susunod na eleksyon, after 3 years, pwede ka sa senador.
Maraming salamat po, Kalyodi. At nakakatuwa naman po, nakikita namin ang inyong kakayahan, hindi lamang sa mga polisiya, sa mga manggagawa, pero yung kaalaman ninyo rin po sa ekonomiya, pati sa mga iba't ibang policies when it comes to finance and the budget. At sa ngayon, magkakaroon lang po tayo ng short break, pero babalik po tayo para ipagtuloy ang pag-uusap natin dito sa The Deep Probe SMNI Presidential Interviews.
Tagpasan na natin. Sorry,
some of the build, divert some of the sa MSMEs, and then also pwede manghiram. I keep saying that, although some candidates felt na hindi viable ang manghiram. Pero kung alam mo actually saan pupunta ang pera mo, pwede manghiram and dapat mga manghiram. Basta sigurado ka lang kung saan pupunta ang pera. By the way, isang problema talaga ng gobyerno is lack of absorptive capability. May pera, hindi naman alam kung paano gast. Basta, nakita ko ito. For example, I've been in corporate. I've been involved in corporate life. I've been involved in government life. And I tell you what, there is great efficiency in corporate life. There is a lot of this in government. There's a lot of discussion of throughput, yung mga proseso. Pero at the end of the day, kulang talaga sa output. No offense, man, pero yun ang talagang nakikita ko. So kailangan talaga ng we want to involve more people who are yun talagang may expertise at talagang may experience at alam nila ang ginagawa nila lalo na sa agrikultura.
Last question. Sorry, I apologize my fellow panelists. You talked about integrating regional markets.
Yes.
Now, there's been a law passed, I think 6 or 7 years ago, the cabotage law, that was supposed to liberalize the domestic shipping industry with the aim of reducing the logistics cost of bringing goods from, say, Mindanao to Luzon. And yet, 6 or 7 years after this law, it's still more expensive to bring goods from Mindanao to Manila than it is to bring goods from Mindanao, say, to Hong Kong or farther away markets. What can be done? I mean, the law is already there.
Will, I suppose. Political will. you know, if the current administration can say, let's finish the bill, we can actually, if it's already there, we can actually implement it. Yeah, yung sinasabi niyo, cabotage law.
Dati po kayong undersecretary sa DFA.
Opo.
At
Ayun,
naging
DFA nga.
first
Undersecretary nga siya ng
spokesperson ng Pangulong Duterte.
Opo.
Tama ako,
Ang katanungan
DFA.
ko po ganito, no? Noong March 2, 2022, merong balita, no? Na ang isang korte sa Pransya ay nagbigay ng award sa Sultan of Toulouse X ng $14.92 billion. Ito po yung claim natin sa Sabah. Okay. Magkatanungan po ako, kung kayo po ay maging presidente, would you or would you not pursue our claim on Sabah?
Atin po yun. Atin po yun.
At bakit po?
Dahil lang po sa dahil lang po sa relasyon ng relasyon natin sa Sultan of Sulu at saka yung kanilang claims. So ang puntos ko po dyan is ituloy po natin. Ituloy po natin at tingnan po din natin kung short of I would suggest again diplomatic solution short of exercising any force which has been suggested before. Pero kung pwede, ituloy po natin yung diplomatikong pag-uusap para makita po natin kung paano po natin ma-maximize yung ating mga claims doon sa lugar na yun.
Meron po tayong batas, no? Republic Act 9522, yung baseline law. Okay po. Ngayon po, ito po supposedly remedial law para doon sa nangyari sa definition ng national territory sa ilalim ng 1973 Constitution at 1987 Constitution. Yung 1973 Constitution, may nakalagay doon sa definition ng national territory na atin din po yung mga lupain by historic right or legal title. Ito po yung nawala sa definition ng national territory doon po sa 1987 Constitution. If you become president, would you amend Republic Act 9522, the baseline law? Kasi po sinabi nila, we dropped the ball here. Hindi natin na-define dito, naka-atin pala ang Sabah.
In which case, I think we need to revisit. I do not pretend to know the legal aspects of that, but we need to revisit it because if there's anything at all that we need to be able to insist on, we need to know what is ours and what is not ours. What truly belongs to us. We need to revisit the law. We need to revisit the whole claim, and I believe we also need to talk with the stakeholders.
What about the interest of the Sabahans, Secretary? The natives in
Yes.
Sabah who are not, there are actually Filipinos there, but they're undocumented and in effect stateless. But and these are different from the Sabahans. They probably identify more with Malaysia than the Philippines. Is
That's
that not a consideration in finding a resolution to this?
That's exactly why I said that we need to have a conversation. We need to talk. This would be part of our process where we need to be able to talk with the stakeholders whether kung ano yung take nila sa situation na yon. We need to talk with the stakeholders.
Yes, I'd like to follow through Rolex's question in regard to your stint at the Department of Foreign Affairs. And it's something to do with the number of legations that we have, consulates as well as embassies. Are we not trying to be like superpowers and having so many embassies and consulates? I remember that that was, during the Cory Aquino administration, that's one of the main tasks that Senator Mercado gave to me, to rationalize the so many embassies and consulates that we have. Did you encounter that kind of challenge when you were there?
As far as I know, that there are a number of offices that are pending, but they haven't been opened because of, as far as if I remember right, kulang tayo ng budget to open certain offices. But the main consideration has always been kung saan may Pilipino, dapat may representation tayo.
That's where I'm going, because it seems like it's the Filipino overseas workers who will decide where you're going to set up a legation. There's nothing wrong with protecting their interests, but I think the core of our diplomacy was to sell to the world, economic diplomacy, and we seem to have forgotten that.
Madugo yung
That's true
interviewan
that
nito,
in
maduguhan.
but I think konektado, I believe
Kaya hindi
konektado
pwede
kasi
yung
economic
apat dito.
diplomacy or the lack of it sa ating ability to produce. Otherwise, ang binibenta natin will be extracted products na hindi talaga gaanong value added kasi mahina din naman yung ating manufacturing wala nga tayong manufacturing So medyo
Bininta
nagbago
kasi
talaga
lahat.
yung nagbago talaga yung landscape. So totoo na baka kailangan natin magbago na i-revisit natin yung ating yung pillars.
Tagisan ng mga
meron po
matatalino.
apat na pillar hindi pinag-uusapan.
Itong interview na to.
Napag-usapan natin to. Yung pang-apat yung cultural.
Yung apat
yung
na
cultural diplomacy.
yung limang
dapat
umatin.
maibenta natin ng maayos ang Pilipino, ang
Kabado
Pilipinas.
sumagot yun. Kaya
Para
ayaw niya.
katulad na nagawa ng Korea, but maybe not in the same
Pang
level
ano
at
kasi
this
ito
stage. Pero kumbaga, yung
pang
the
political
branding of
science
it.
talaga yung mga
Pero
tanungan
meron na
dito.
tayo, actually, meron talaga tayong
Kung mahina-hina ka sa
malalim, no? Ang lalim ng
economics,
social capital ng Pilipino abroad.
political
For example,
science,
even in Israel, di ba sabi ni
hindi mo masyadong masasagot
Bibi
ito.
Netanyahu, sabi niya, mahal na mahal niya Pilipino dahil lang sa nag-aalaga ng kanyang nanay ay
Magaling tong
Pilipina.
mga
So, kumbaga, meron tayong malalim na social capital, pero wag na natin basta
Nandito.
gayahin, for example, ang
Na
Korea,
umatin.
kasi meron din naman. Pero ang pwede natin gawin kasi, katulad doon nakita namin, i-maximize natin, for example, yung ating entertainment, yung ating movie industry. For example, in 2006, we were in Nairobi, and we found that during lunchtime, humihina yung traffic. Why? Kasi pati yung mga, ang tawag nito, pati yung mga members of parliament were actually stopping to watch the teleserye of, what's his name? Pangako sa'yo. Yeah, Pangako sa'yo. Tandaan nyo pa. So, kumbaga, kung pwede siguro, ay talagang pwedeng magkaroon tayo ng tweaking at streamlining at tingnan natin kung saan talaga tayo magbibigay ng emphasis.
Yeah, but that's another dimension of my question, which is really, why should we be exporting this kind of labor, which is low-wage labor, being caregivers for the elderly and both ends of the demographics, when we can in fact be exporting engineers, doctors, medical personnel, and the like, and give it to other countries with less competent people to do the caregiving work, which for most parts, based on the reports coming to us, are those who are more likely to be maltreated in their places of work. So that's why I said, with the advances in technology, in communication, you don't need to establish an embassy or a consulate wherever Filipinos are. Like in the United States, how many consulates do you have there when you only need one at Washington, D.C.? I mean, how many consulates do you need to renew passports and, get people to pledge to be Philippine citizens again? This is what I mean. The bureaucratic reform needs to start somewhere, and I think the DFA should be a good start.
Well, well taken. Very well taken. Noted and well taken. Thank you.
Secretary Abella, so my question is about foreign policy. I think you expect this.
Madugo ang ilong
As I
dudugo ang
understand,
ilong
you
mo.
will continue the foreign policy line of President Duterte
Ako nga
expressed in this
lutang na
very
dito.
elegant
Nantok na ako.
statement. Friends to all, enemies to none. And, this reminds me of the foreign policy of the United States for most of its history, like from its founding. It was neutral in any wars in Europe, and it only got involved and took a position in world wars during the First World War. Now my question is, because I've seen that you voted to be neutral in the Ukraine-Russia conflict in one of the presidential debates. So my question is, do you see any link between a country's foreign policy position in these kinds of conflict and its internal development?
Okay.
Kasi, I would like to link this to your idea of magpalakas tayo ng loob.
Tama.
So do you see any link between these two?
Una-una, although I said neutral, tandaan natin na nag-sign tayo doon sa UNGA. Ha? We signed the UNGA statement condemning the violence. But if you read the statement, and I'm sure you did, it condemned the violence, but it did not condemn any aggressor, which I thought was brilliant. It was brilliant na, you can do something like this and still wala kang kinakalaban. I believe at a certain stage, tulad ng habang nagpapalakas tayo, dapat marunong tayong ganun ang dapat na lakad natin. Na hindi tayo, we're not pushovers. And we can actually make statements. We can actually take a position, but we don't need to antagonize anybody right now, especially kung baka meron naman tayong mga interest o ongoing negotiations. So, yun. So, going back, kailangan talaga naniniwala ako na pwede natin gawin itong mga bagay na to.
Panoorin niyo po ito, guys, sa
Iba yung
mga
economic
mahilig po
sanction.
sa
Iba rin yung diplomatic sanctions. Ang ginawa natin was a diplomatic sanction, pero wala naman tayong abilidad right now to have economic sanctions. So, doon tayo sa diplomatic.
Thank you, Secretary Abella.
Yes, ma'am.
And now you may give your closing remarks.
Tapos na ba yun?
Unfortunately, 1 hour went by very quickly.
Sigurado ka? Anyway. Sige, ganito na lang. Unang-una, nagpapasalamat ako, Karen, sa oportunidad. No? Pero gusto ko siguro kausapin ang ating Filipino electorate. Nakakatuwa pong pakinggan na nagbabago ang ating political landscape at nagbabago din po ang electorate. At ngayong Mayo 9, 2022, ay hinihikayat ko po kayong to do something new and to do something bold. And that is to vote not just according to conscience, but according to vision. Meron po akong ililipat sa inyo na pananaw. At ang pananaw po ay ito, na pwede pong magkaroon ng isang siglo Pilipino, na pwede pong magkaroon ng isang Philippine century na kung saan meron pong peaceful economic rise ang Pilipinas, na pwede pong magkaroon ng 100 taon na 100 taong pagtaas, pag-angat ng ating bayan. Kung man lang tayo mismo ay ating pong tanggapin na ang pagbabago ay hindi nakalagay sa balikat ng presidente lang, kundi para sa buong sambayanan. That we could also have a nation that is righteous, peaceful, and joyful, a nation that is just, and a nation that is worthy of its people, and a people worthy of its nation. This is a vision that I have, and I shared it with you, and I say it's possible, and let's do it, and let's just do it together. Maraming salamat po.
Ayan, tapos na po si Secretary Abella.
Maraming salamat, Secretary Ernie Abella, at masalamat din sa ating mga panelists. I think what resonated with me the most was when Secretary Abella said, hindi ba napakaganda ng ating bansa kung hindi lamang sa balikat ng ating magiging Pangulo nakasandal ang kabukasan ng ating bansa, kundi para sa atin din at bilang mga kababayan na may malasakit at merong responsibilidad para sa ating bansa. And we're down to our last candidate for tonight. Ang susunod na kandidato ay may battle cry for unity para sa kanya. Pagkakaisa ng sambayan ng Pilipino sa gitna ng malalaking problema ng ating bansa, ang susi para sa mabilis na pagbabangon nito. This candidate is a consistent frontrunner in the election surveys. Nakita natin ang performance niya sa surveys, pero ano kaya ang magiging performance niya sa pagsagot sa mga panelists? Makikita natin yan sa pagbabalik ng The Deep Probe, the SMNI Presidential Candidates Interview.
batas na ito ay dapat at igalang ay magkakaroon tayo ng mapayapang bansa. So next si BBM na. Picture taking muna sila. Picture taking. Yung mga panels. Sana kung nandito yung lima. Yung mga lima. Kahit yung apat na mga basher ni BBM. yung basher ni BBM ay yung apat. Lalo si Lennon. Traffic co-is. Si Pacman. Tuloy ang pagbabago. Ayan na. Ibigin na.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Marcos.
Saan?
Good evening, ma'am.
If this were, I've never been to a campaign rally, but if this looks like it, and maybe multiplied so many times over, I can imagine what they're feeling is like euphoria, isn't it? Because we're not even involved and we're feeling euphoric here.
It's very encouraging, ma'am. That's true.
Okay, this is the second time we are going through this, but this time it will be banter. Nothing aggressive nor belligerent. You have the thickest portfolio here. I counted more than 50 pages which were submitted to the network and which were given to us. So, I have 1,000 questions, but since I have 3 other colleagues here, maybe I'll ask something which is right in my alley. And I think I have asked this also in my post in the social media. And post-Ukraine, assuming that you have a peace agreement within the next 2 weeks, which is more likely, do you see a new political and economic order, but this time you have other political actors like Moscow, Beijing, and even Tehran?
Yes.
What's your take on that?
There will be a new world order. Because I think watching Ukraine and seeing the developments, and which are not exactly going the way of that the President Putin would have wanted it to. I suspect there will be domestic implications to whatever the peace agreement is going to be. I hope you're right, ma'am, that it will be done in 2 weeks because we are the entire world is suffering. But there will be a very big change because the how do you say the idea. I think some of the analysts have said, I don't know if you agree with this, is that President Putin is trying to reconstruct or recreate the Soviet Union under another name. So perhaps this was his move. Should he weaken as a political figure in his own country, in Russia, then certainly that policy of trying to gain territory through whatever means, as he says, because to provide for him a buffer to NATO, whatever the reason might truly be. I think that will have to be re-studied by whoever will be most dominant in Russian domestic politics after Putin. So yes, I believe there will be a new world order, and I think I am certain that Tehran and Beijing are watching very, very closely what will happen to Ukraine. There will be a geopolitical balance of power. It also depends on what the reaction of the EU and the United States will be. I think the United States we can predict fairly accurately. EU is in a more difficult spot
simply because they are highly dependent for their energy to Russia, and how they will balance that. I know that that the President Biden has just signed with the EU a deal to supply from the United States and from other countries 15 billion tons of gas, which will cover some of the needs of the EU. But again, that's not something that can instantly be to instantly be applied.
Galing talaga ni
There
BBM
will be
sumagot.
a transition period because it is a very large economic infrastructure that has been developed for Europe to take advantage of the gas supplies out of Russia. These are all terribly large forces, and inevitably will change things.
Yeah, well, it seems like you have a more dire scenario, future scenario in mind. But what I have used really is from a content analytical perspective using events data analysis, meaning I'm paying attention to the verbs being used by the negotiators. And and this is not Pollyannish, by the way, Mr. Marcos. It's just that I feel that Putin will not allow the conflict to spill over. It will encapsulate within the Ukraine conflict area. And that, yes, I still believe that within the next 2 weeks, you have a peace agreement.
I sincerely hope so, because misunderstandings, mistakes can occur. With Poland being right there on the border of Ukraine, we already have had reports of missiles that mistakenly flew into Poland. And these are the kind of things that we have to be very careful about. I think maybe that is one thing that they can agree upon, Russia and the West, as we have referred to it often.
Mr. Marcos, earlier, I don't know if you were around already when I asked questions about the projected state visit of Vladimir Putin here in the Philippines, because the Duterte administration has only so many more breaths to take before the end of their regime, of their tenure. When you become president, will he honor that invitation that Duterte had given to him to do a
Certainly.
state visit?
Oh,
Not
well,
just a visit, a state visit.
Well, certainly. Why not? We have diplomatic relations with Moscow. We should continue to honor that agreement that we have with Russia, and we must continue to again cultivate the relationships that are beneficial to the country. And it's not, as long as we make our position very clear that self-determination is an important principle as far as the Philippines is concerned. And in that context, then we can still speak on many other subjects with Russia.
Yeah, so that means you're not telegraphing something to the United States of America by welcoming Vladimir Putin in the state visit.
It need not be Russia or Vladimir Putin, any country. I think that would like to come and visit and would feel that there is something beneficial to be gained by furthering, strengthening relationships between our two countries is something that we should always be open to.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Marcos.
Good evening.
Ang tanong ko po ay ito, ang nabanggit niyo po ang phrase na New World Order na sa tingin niyo ay maaaring mangyari pagkatapos ng peace treaty between Ukraine and Russia. And we see that the world will be restructured around a new framework or a new geopolitical order. So my question is this, I hope that you realize the burden or the special task that you have as a future chief architect of our foreign policy. Because in the past drawing of world orders, the Philippines never played a role in determining its position in that world order. For example, between the wars of Spain and the United States, it's the United States that defined our position in that new world order. When the United Nations was instituted after post-World War II, we were still at the coattails of the United States. But now we are an independent country. So my question is, when this new world order that you think could happen after a peace treaty gets concluded between Ukraine and Russia, how will you position our country in this new geopolitical order?
It very clearly will depend on what the exit strategy will be for the West, for EU, and for Putin in the peace agreement that we hope they will sign. What the nature of that agreement will be. Will it be status quo? The forces that are in that are in Ukraine, the Russian forces that are, and Belarusian forces that are already in Ukraine, will they just stay where they are, status quo? Will they be told to withdraw? I only say that because it is very important to Putin's position domestically. He is in a very precarious place because it has not gone according to plan. I suspect that he was hoping that it would be a similar situation as it was in Crimea, where they pretty much just walked in, with very little resistance. But then they prepared Crimea for a long time. They were helping the rebel groups, the Russian-speaking groups, and they were developing them. And they built a corridor on the east side of Crimea, within which the Russians could cross the border very easily. That hasn't been the case in Ukraine. And so, depending on how it is viewed, the peace treaty that we hope will come, it depends on how it is viewed by the local domestic political scenarios in Russia itself. That, whatever the reaction will be to Putin, will will fix one of the variables in the geopolitical new world order. So we still have to wait to see what happens. I'm sure China is waiting with bated breath to see what's going to happen here. Tehran, I'm sure, as the professor mentioned, is clearly a player in this regard. And in the Middle East now, so far it has not affected the Middle East in any way so far. But maybe if it works out for Russia, if it works out for Vladimir Putin, China might be emboldened to make their own moves. Tehran might be emboldened to make their own moves. On the other hand, if it is very much a rejection of the idea of Putin of taking over a country, then perhaps that will also influence their thinking as to what can and cannot be done for their own interests. So yes, I don't think we can predict very closely because we cannot. I hope to be as optimistic as the professor, but I don't see it happening in 2 weeks, to be perfectly honest. I hope it is. I hope it does, because the economic effects on every single person in the world has been enormous. And it is going to be enormous for a good long while. It's not going to go away anytime soon.
Sir, since we have a mutual defense treaty with the United States, that would affect, I'm sure that would play a role in how our country would position ourselves in this new geopolitical world order. So my question is, to what extent will you allow the United States influence your actual decision making in how you're going to craft the future foreign policy of the Philippines when that new world order has already taken shape?
Well, we have a very special relationship with the United States, and it's something that we have had and developed over 100 years, starting from being essentially a colony to a very strong partner here, especially in this part of the world, in the region. And that, I think, has been a good thing for both countries, both for the United States and for the Philippines. And that I think we can still depend on that. But the scenario that you spoke about, where we historically have always been with the United States, is still, I think, a carryover, a hangover of the Cold War.
and we discussed it a little bit the last time. And I don't think the geopolitics of today are the same. And we now have to tread that very fine line to make sure that it's the Philippines, it's the Philippine interests that are the primacy of Philippine interests in anything. Now, in geopolitics, especially, we have another superpower 600 kilometers from our coastline, China. That puts again the Philippines in quite a precarious position. We're lucky because we're important geopolitically, even we're strategically. We are unlucky because we are important geopolitically, and we've become a bit of a hot potato when it comes to that. So we definitely have to consider what is best always for the Philippines. And how do we achieve that? With our existing partnerships, alliances, as they stand now, with what will be a new world order. Will it be a very big change? Will it be a small, slight change? Will it be a big change for Russia and a small change for everybody else? There are many moving parts to this thing, and it's not something that is easily definable. But I think once the peace agreement is made, we will study it very, very closely, and we will ask our best experts to determine what is the effect in these other countries. What is the effect to Tehran, to Iran? What's the effect? How does it change their thinking in Beijing? How does it change the thinking in Washington, D.C.? These are the big players. These are the people we have to deal with. So yes, it's not. I wish I could give you a categorical answer, but until we know exactly what that peace treaty will contain, it's very difficult, and to know what will happen after that in Russia. How will the power structure change? Will there be? Will Putin be removed? Will he still maintain his position? All of these things are going to play a part in what it will look like after that. After the peace treaty.
Senator, good evening. With this as a backdrop, the discussion with Russia, Ukraine, I was wondering if you can pivot to domestic concerns, particularly your energy policy.
Yeah.
Because as you said, the conflict is being felt worldwide, and among the things that we are seeing are sky-high fuel prices. But how would you address this? What would be your policies, particularly with energy security, going beyond this issue?
In the past week or so, since the war in Ukraine began, I have been espousing a policy of subsidizing all oil imports. Because the idea is that transport is the first sector that's going to be affected, but everyone will be affected. And therefore, if we are to support everyone, we have to subsidize all oil imports, in my view. However, I have been crunching the numbers. We can't do it. We cannot afford it. It's that simple. So we have to focus now. Maliwanag, yung mga transport group talagang naghihingalo dahil dito sa pagtaas ng presyo ng langis. Pero alam naman natin, pag tumaas ang presyo ng langis, sabay-sabay susunod na yung mga iba. So we have to focus in the sectors that will actually that will mitigate the effects of the oil price rise. Perhaps there still exists the option of perhaps giving a tax holiday on the excise taxes to the oil for the oil imports. However, the pandemic is not over. We do not know what is going to happen next. When each time we thought tapos na, it came back. And I'm sure all of us after Christmas, after the Omicron hit at the end of January, sabi natin siguro baka tapos nito, baka wala na. But then we hear news now about Korea, about China, about Hong Kong, that they're locking down again. So we need those funds. well, the government doesn't need the funds, people need the funds. And so we will still have to continue to collect as much as we can in preparation for any possible occurrence in terms of the pandemic. Baka may bagong strain, baka may babalik. But I don't think we will ever return to a time of lockdown anymore.
Senator, just before we go on the break, I was wondering if you can clarify your position on the oil price stabilization fund, because there's been some talk in social media to report, and I don't know if you are. Of course, the appeal is that there will be subsidy when prices are high,
Yes.
but the downside is that prices will remain high because when global prices dip. And there's the argument, of course, that the market is always more efficient in determining prices. Could you clarify your position?
No, I think it is not to change the price of the oil. It's to change the rate of change. It is to try and mitigate the rate of change. So that, let's say, if the price increase is from Sunday to Monday, instead of increasing the full, let's say we're going to increase by, I don't know, 5 pesos, let's say. Instead of doing it all in one shot, we do it slowly because we have a stabilization fund. There is no way to bring the price of oil down from the Philippines. We are at the mercy of the oil producers. We in the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, are 0.07% of the fossil fuel market, and therefore have very little influence on pricing. And we do not produce very little in terms of oil production. Malampaya is about they say will dry up in the next 2 or 3 years. So yes, it is a very, very big problem. But the OPS that I proposed is really to lessen the impact, and instead of making the impact instantaneous, we will try to make it happen over a longer time to give businessmen, consumers more time to adjust and to plan for the new regime of oil prices and oil products that would come to the Philippines.
Senador, kung may time pa?
We'll have to take a short break for now. Yes.
It's okay.
Sorry, Rolex.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've become the symbol of the human time clock.
You know.
But the panel will still have a lot of questions for you, Senator Marcos. Unfortunately, we have to interrupt for a short break. So to everyone watching, don't go away. The Deep Probe SMNI presidential interviews will be right back.
So, tinanong si BBM kung ano yung posisyon niya doon sa pagtaas ng presyo ng langis. Sabi ni BBM ay subsidized. So, pag tumaas ang presyo ng langis, kung ano daw, 5 piso, kung ano yung presyo pa rin, manatiling ganun yung presyo, ang gobyerno ang mag-shoulder mag-shoulder doon sa pagtaas. Kung tumas daw ng 5 piso, ang gobyerno yung mag-shoulder ng 5 piso. So, yun po yung sinabi ni BBM. Yung kanyang posisyon niya sa stocks ay yung pagtaas ng presyo ng langis, tamsak harang yung pagtaas ng presyo ng langis, hindi daw kailangan suspendin yung excise tax kasi baka daw doon kumukuha yung gobyerno na ginagastos natin lalo sa pagtugon sa pandemya. So, hindi napapanahon para suspendin yung excise tax na pangulikta para lang mapigilan yung pagtaas ng presyo ng langis. So, yung kanyang posisyon doon, baka daw kasi may magbabalik na ibang virus or magsusulputan na hindi tayo handa sa ganun. Kaya kailangan meron pa ring pondo ang gobyerno. So, subsidize ang tugon ni BBM sa pagtaas ng presyo ng langis. So, ang gobyerno ang mag-shoulder doon sa pagtaas ng presyo. An example niya, kung wari, 5 piso daw ang tinaas, yung gobyerno yung magpapasan nun. So, let's see, panoorin pa natin yung karugtong ang mga tanungan dito kay BBM para malaman natin kung ano yung talagang posisyon niya dito sa kanya, kung siya ay mahalal na presidente ng Pilipinas. Paano yung mga gagawin niya para masolusyonan ang mga problema ng Pilipinas. So, kung paano niya mapa-unlad, di ba? So, yan. Back na tayo pa. Sun Explorer, mega love shoutout. Ayan. Naka-flex tayo sa SMNI, yung sa The Deep Probe, kung saan yung mga presidential aspirant ay isa-isa pong in-interview.
Nagbabalik po tayo sa The Deep
Yung
Probe,
lima,
the SMNI
kumasa,
Presidential
yung
Candidates
5, hindi
Interview.
kumasa.
And right before the
So,
break,
alam na
the
natin kung sino
conversation
yung mga
between
hindi
Presidential
dumalo dyan.
candidate Senator Marcos and the
Yung
panelists
mga
was spanning
duwag
several
kay,
issues, including
duwag na
the
humarap kay Professor
geopolitical
Carlos.
conflicts and the oil price crisis.
Baka hindi daw kaya
Now
ng
we will
brain
resume
cells
the questions from the panelists.
Magandang gabi po, Senator.
Good evening, Rolex.
Ang katanungan ko po ay tungkol sa power. Alam niyo po, yung IPIRA, hinati yung bansa natin. Electric Power Reforms Industry Act, IPIRA. Yan po, ganito. Recently, ang Malacanang po naglabas. Pinirmahan ng Pangulo, Executive Order 164, adding nuclear power to the energy mix. And among others, to study the viability kung pwede pa natin i-operate yung BNPP at ang iba pang mga facilities para sa paggamit ng nuclear energy. Pwede mo malaman kung ano yung isip nyo po tungkol dito? Kasi po mangyayari sa sunod na termino, ang 18 milestones. Ito po yung unang hakbang lamang.
Marami talagang pinag-uusapan. Energy is hard. Ito, aaminin ko sa inyo, talagang pinag-aaralan ko, napakahirap ayusin. Dahil nga yung ating sistema, the IPIRA law, marami talaga nakakontain dyan na kailangan pag-aralan ulit. Because ang reklamo sa buong bansa, both na consumers lamang at saka yung mga negosyante. Kasi lagi natin napapag-usapan mga foreign investors na nagre-reklamo sa power, pati local investors. Kaya ang investment sa Pilipinas is not capital intensive. Yung mga investment sa Pilipinas short term lang, kuminsan hot money lang ang pumapasok, pasok-labas lang yan. It doesn't build anything. So that is it. It is a major problem. At kung titignan natin ang mga projection sa pangyayari, ngayon, just as a perfect example, narinig na siguro naman ng lahat, na sinasabi na baka sa eleksyon magkakaroon ng brownout. Kaya dahil nasa gitna na tayo ng summer, ng tag-araw. Kaya yan ang maliwanag na maliwanag, kulang na talaga ang power supply doon sa ating requirements.
Yung
At
brownout
saka,
na yan,
yung idadagdag pa dapat
bantayan
natin para
yan.
makapag-industrialize tayo ng mabuti. Kaya it's something that has to be attended to. In other words, kailangan natin lahat. Kailangan natin lahat ng makuha natin na power sources para
natulog lang tayo, may nanalo.
ng mas mura at mas malawak at mas reliable na power supply. Ngayon, maaari nating i-expand yung ating hydro, expand natin yung ating geothermal. But there's a very simple idea when it comes to the energy sector. It's something called the base load. The base load is the load that never goes away. Just the demand that never goes away. Kahit gabi, kahit araw. Ito na yung mga planta na nagpapatakbo.
Ayan, planta.
So that base load has to be satisfied. Kaya kung hindi umiihip ang hangin, paano yung wind power? Kung gabi, paano yung solar power? Kailangan pa rin ng traditional. Ngayon, doon tayo mamimili. Although it's not traditional for the Philippines, nuclear power is already considered a traditional power source. So it has to be looked into. Yung sa BNPP, nag-offer na because if you, ang Korea has, I believe, 5 sister plants to the Westinghouse plant in BNPP. And they have offered, I always say it's ironic that the names of their plants are Core 1, Core 2, Core 3, Core 4, Core 5. Pero hindi tayo nagkaroon kahit isa. But they have offered to come with their technical people, and they have offered to come to give us an idea. Pwede pa ba ito? Because kahit pa paano, it was the BNPP, the Bataan Nuclear Power Plant, was supposed to go online with 650 megawatts in 1986. That's a long time ago. Marami ng bagong technologies, marami ng bagong requirements. So we'll see. We have to. I think we should be open to our Korean friends to come and to tell us if this is still viable or you have to do something else. When it comes to nuclear power as an idea, well, let's just follow the science because dito naging political sa Pilipinas. It's also political in other places, but in our particular case, the reason we have no power plant, nuclear power plant at all, is pure politics. Did not really follow the science. So we have to look into it. Because
politika talaga ang pumigil sa nuclear power plant dito sa Pilipinas.
When everybody was saying nuclear power is going to, we have to rethink, kailangan natin pag-aralan ulit dyan, mukhang delikado. Walang nagbago ng kanilang pagplano na pagpatayo ng nuclear power plant kahit saan. America tuloy-tuloy pa rin. Sa France, the majority of their power is already created by nuclear power. So in the other countries, ganun din. So I still think it's something we should examine. There are many new technologies. One of the ones that are the modular nuclear power plant. They start with a small one. Gusto mong palakihin, bumili ka ulit ng module, ikakabit mo ng palaki mo ng palaki hanggat gusto mo. Siguro naman kaya natin patakbuhin ang nuclear power plant. Wala naman, there's no reason na bakit hindi kaya ng Pilipino na magpatakbo ng nuclear power plant. So, it's something that should be part of the mix. Kasama diyan is COP26, where we decided to cut down on coal-fired power generation. And what happened, nagtaasan ng presyo kasi walang kapalit sa renewable. Ibig sabihin, yung mix ng renewable at saka traditional, kailangan talaga natin, we have to decide once and for all, what is the mix that's good for the Philippines. I think it's not going to be a static point. I think as years go on, and we develop renewables, we develop other sources of power, that mix is going to slowly shift towards renewables, hopefully, because that's what we want of climate change. But nonetheless, that mix is still something that's up in the air that we haven't really determined what is proper and appropriate for the Philippine setting. But to make a short answer to your question, is that lahat kailangan natin. Kailangan natin palakihin ng hydroelectric, kailangan natin palakihin yung geothermal, kailangan natin paramihan ng mga power plant, kailangan natin tumingin sa mga bagong technologies, wind farm, solar, kailangan natin tingnan ng nuclear. At kung kailangan talaga, di balikan natin oil-fired. But oil-fired has become less and less attractive because of what's happening in the volatility of oil prices, especially in the last 2-3 years. Then with this new development in Ukraine, talagang kailangan pag-isip-isipan natin ng mabuti. Kasi baka maipit tayo, pag tumaas na naman yan, hindi natin maipatakbo yung planta natin, balik na naman tayo sa dati, nasa brownout na naman tayo. Now we have lots of coal here in the Philippines. The Chinese claim to have good enough technology. I've actually visited one of their coal-fired plants that na malinis na, that they're able to extract the carbon and they're able to dispose of the carbon properly. So all of these things we need to look into. Lahat yan kailangan natin.
Well, after the generating companies, meron po tayong Transco. Marami reklamo sa Transco. Senador, open ba kayo sa idea na katulad ng tubig, may west sector operator, may east sector operator, chop natin ang Transco?
I don't think so. May economies of scale yan eh. Ang business model ng high tension na delivery na ginagamit ng Transco is the same as a tollway.
Thank you for
You maintain the tollway,
dropping
you collect
by.
toll, and that's how you pay for what you build. That's the same thing that Transco should be doing.
Ito yung the deep pro
Yun
ng
lamang, siguro
presidential aspirant.
hindi sapat. Sa amin lang, marami kaming pangangailangan dyan sa
Interview
Transco.
po yan,
We're hoping
interview.
to build a high tension cable from Ilocos Norte to directly export the power we are producing via windmills directly to Manila, because that's where the demand is, and it's more profitable for us. But hanggang ngayon hindi pa nangyayari. And I'm not sure. I'm not privy to the board meetings and the discussions going on in Transco. So I do not know quite why wala pa yan. But yes, it really should be a simple operation na madali lang naman patakbuhin dapat yan. Kaya pag-aralan natin kung bakit nagkakaganon. You mentioned IPIRA. We have to look back at IPIRA. I think IPIRA might already have at least certain provisions in IPIRA are already obsolete. As a matter of fact.
Senator?
Yes.
I hope you don't mind. I'd like to switch topics a little bit because we have a short period to ask so many issues.
All right.
I'd like to ask about agriculture because you've mentioned that in the last time you were here. One of the biggest problems that the sector is facing is the aging of farmers.
Yes.
One study I've read said that their average age is between 57 and 59. And the worst thing is their children don't want to go into agriculture. And this observation is supported by declining enrollment in agricultural programs of SUCs across the nation. And last, the Secretary of Agriculture last year said that we may be facing a critical shortage of farmers in as little as 12 years. And he said this last year. So maybe you'd like to share with us what your plans are regarding this issue.
Regarding the age of farmers getting older, not only are they discouraged to come in, their parents who are farmers, they say, wag na kayong pumasok dito, napakahirap ng buhay dito. Mag-aral kayo, pumunta kayo sa Manila, pumunta kayo sa city, dyan kayo magpagaling para hindi niyo na kailangan daanan itong dinadaanan namin. That's the state of the agriculture in the Philippines today. As a general rule, as a general concept, I think we have to really shift already from what is essentially still mom and pop operation and talk about agribusiness and talk about the industry of agriculture. And there are many things that we need to do to achieve that, to get to that point. See, let's go back to the issue of the age of our farmers and the young people who are not going into agriculture. If it is an agribusiness, if it is not the traditional farming method that we are always going through, that we have been doing for the last millennia, but move into something that is more high-tech, then that will necessarily need for the entry into more technically minded agribusiness practitioners. And that will bring the age younger immediately. I know already for myself, young people in their 30s who have discovered some new technology or have come across a new thing. Bagay sa atin to, gawin natin. And they do, and they have brought all kinds of new techniques to farming, but it's not yet extensive because there are no encouragements coming from government in terms of tax breaks, in terms of I don't really believe in subsidies in that regard, but I still think that we can improve the attractiveness of the agricultural sector to younger people if we use the most modern, most interesting technology. And the kids say they can geek it out, right? They'll just pag-aralan nila na mabuti. That's a very interesting. It will become a very interesting line of work.
Is there an important role for government to play? Because if you look at the public spending on agriculture in the Philippines, it's only about 1.7% of national budget, far below what is being spent in other ASEAN countries.
Yes, it's been that, and it has been that way for a long time. I think we have really neglected agriculture because we had a system set up where the entire value chain was attended to by government. And of course, the private sector practitioners come into the picture during the trading and in the market. But that was dismantled in 1986 and has not been a replacement for it. So we have to do it again. And if we look at the countries that we are competing with in terms of rice production, for example, they're Thailand and Vietnam, the obvious ones. Their cost of production is lower. The labor, segment of their production cost is 1/2 of ours. And that's due to mechanization. We have not mechanized at all. It's going to take, it's not a simple thing because we have to organize now to be able to mechanize properly, to use the big machines, the big tractors, the big harvesters. Yung nakikita natin sa ibang bansa na ginagamit, nakalaki-laki, na ang bilis-bilis, siguro sa isang araw, ilang hektarya na nakocover nila. Pero ang average na land holding dito sa Pilipinas is less than 1 hectare. So hindi mo magamit yung mga ganung klaseng makina. So the way to do it, or the way we did it in Ilocos, was we organized the cooperatives. And in that way, we were able to take full advantage of economies of scale. And I think that's what we need to do here in the Philippines now. But there are other things that need to be done as well. I think the fact that we are importing galunggong has been made very, very public. It's been very, very clear that it is quite a surprise for us to get into that situation. But again, it really comes from a neglect and the agricultural sector. So the things we have to do the research and development for the new varieties, for the new yung nag-aalaga ng hayop, paano yung gagawin yung pagkalat ng mga inahin. Again, these are different schemes that we have to put together. In our fisheries, there is a very, very good potential for us kung ayusin lang natin ang ating kinukuhanan ng isda. Number one, bigyan natin yung mga mangingisda na mas malaking bangka. Maliliit lang yung bangka nila eh. And they have to go out already 12 kilometers kasi overfish na dito sa loob. And then of course, patrol so that maraming nagpo-poach sa atin. So we have to have all the best techniques and technologies for our farmers and for our fisher folk. So that's just the beginning of it. And then the support. Now, one of the biggest problems that the agricultural industry is facing right now in terms of crops is urea is 2,500 pesos now. And we know of many areas where farmers just didn't plant. And that kills our production. Taas na naman ang importation natin. Because kung minsan, kung kulang talaga. Kung pabayaan mo yan, tataas naman ang presyo, hindi na kaya ng tao. Kaya talagang kailangan ayusin yung agrikultura. So you have to support, the government has to support that. This question of urea, for example, siguro ang gobyerno na ang bibili in bulk, hundreds of tons of urea, and then isama na yan sa production loan bago planting season. Magbibigay ka ng production loan sa farmer, yung iba pera, yung iba seedlings, yung iba abono, the fertilizer, at saka yung pesticide. And then you could support them with new techniques, the techno demos, to teach them what are the new plants, what are the new techniques, how you can save water, how you can save on the other inputs, etc., etc. And then the processing. You know, it is not, should not really be allowed anymore. Dapat in the year 2022, dapat wala na tayong nakikitang palay na tinutuyo sa highway. Dahil dapat meron na tayong binigay. Yeah, si Rolex knows this well from because sa local talagang yun ang problema eh. So, tapos yung mga milling, dapat talaga meron tayong milling na small scale, large scale, depending on what everyone. So the value stays with the farmer. Hindi pumupunta sa trader na may malaking milling na planta. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the traders. They have a part to play. But let's keep as much of the value added and give it back to the farmer. And then, if we are able to do that, gumanda ang ating production, mumura ang ating production cost, we can directly sell it. And the kadiwa is the example that we always use. We can sell it to the public at a lower price, assuming the government will not make a profit, because the government should not make a profit. So they should be able to sell these basic agricultural products for less.
Mr. Marcos,
Yes,
we all know that your campaign's theme is unity. And recently, you made a statement on an issue that, would test your call for unity, because this issue is really polarizing in our country. And I'm referring to your statement on LGBTQ rights. And so my question is, there are a lot of interests that had to be balanced here, especially that even though that we are a secular country, our people, around 80% of our people have really, really strong religious beliefs. And these two things, are always contrary to each other. So my question is, how will you balance the legitimate aim of protecting the rights and welfare of LGBTQ people while at the same time respecting the legitimate interests of religious groups that they can freely pursue their belief on this matter?
I don't think LGBTQ issues are polarizing in the Philippines, honestly. I think we are much more open-minded about it, considering the fact that we are in fact a very Roman Catholic country. But then you must, and so that I don't think it's polarizing at all. I think Filipinos are, I don't know how to put it, but we're much cooler than most other places when it comes to these things. So, and I think when I talk to the members of that community, wala namang hinihingi na special treatment ang mga LGBTQ. Wag lang, do not discriminate against us. Yun lang naman yun eh. We don't want a special program for you, for ourselves. We want to, do something. Just patas lang. Patas lang, pare-pareho lang. Na kahit LGBTQ kami, kahit matanda kami, kahit come from the wrong place, I don't know, whatever. All forms of discrimination are some things that we have to guard against because that's corrosive. That just gets in the way. It doesn't help. It doesn't help anything. So that, I think, is the approach to LGBTQ issues: is just fight discrimination every step of the way. There's a pool of talent in every sector of our society that we need to take advantage of, and so we cannot exclude any part and say, hindi pwede yan. Hindi na ayaw namin sa ganyan. And let me get to the point. I mean, LGBTQ, Roman Catholic, you will say that it's a. What did the Pope say when he was asked about same-sex marriage, same-sex union? Let me correct myself. Same-sex union. And I think the Pope said it perfectly. Who am I to judge? And that's the attitude that we all of us should have. And with that, I think we'll go down the correct place. We will go down the right path.
Yeah, I think this
Sorry,
will be...
Professor Carlos, I know that you warned me about seniors.
So, ayun na nga guys. Nalaglag po tayo dahil sa mabagal na internet. Yan. Balik po tayo sa pag-flex dito sa the Smni presidential interview. The deep probe. The deep probe. Ayan. Commercial muna, commercial. So, ang posisyon po ni BBM dun sa agriculture, no, maliwanag na sinabi yan na kailangan yung mga kabataan ay mag-aral ng agriculture, no, sa pagtatanim ng palay. Wag natin silang ilihis doon sa bagay na makakabuti para sa ating bansa na yung about sa agriculture na kung saan yung iba wag ka dito. Oo. Doon ka magtrabaho sa magandang opisina, sa mall, at mahirap ang pagsasaka. Yun po yung kalimitan na pinapangarap ng mga ibang magulang na magsasaka. So, yun yung dapat palitan natin ng ibang strategy na dapat pamulat sa mga kabataan na mahalaga ang agriculture, pagtatanim ng palay dahil dito tayo kumukuha ng ating pagkain araw-araw para hindi na tayo masyadong mag-import, no? Dahil dati tayo ang nag-export, ngayon tayo na ang nag-import. So yung nag-aral na Vietnam, Thailand sa atin, sila na yung maunlad na bansa sa agriculture. So sabi ni Bibin, kung may mga modern naman na kagamitan, equipment, no, sa pagsasaka, bakit hindi natin gawin yun para mapabilis yung pagsasaka, harvest. At yung yung kalimitan na ginagawa, no, yung pinapatuyo sa kalsada yung inaning palay. Dapat daw magkaroon ng sariling warehouse, kung saan magpapatuyo at direct na rin yung kiskisan, yung rice mill, no? Na hindi dapat nadalhin sa malalaking rice miller. So kailangan magkaroon sila ng rice millers doon sa kanilang barangay, no, na kunwari grupo ito, no, grupo na magsasaka at may sarili silang kiskisan ng palay. Yun yung gusto ni Bibi, para yung production mababa. Kasi pagdating sa mga private kasi nabibili, siyempre mataas yung bintahan, pero pag binili nila sa magsasaka ay mura lang, no. So talo ang magsasaka, kailangan fair lang ang competition. Kailangan mas makuha ng magsasaka yung puhunan at tutubo pa sila. Ganun dapat. Hindi yung sila yung lugi. Ang posisyon naman niya sa LGBTQ ay pantay-pantay na pagtingin at respeto, no. Kahit saan man daw sila mapunta ay kailangan yung discrimination ay huwag mangibabaw at respeto pa rin sa mga LGBT dahil hindi natin po sila kailangan husgahan. According din kay Bibi, may yung Pope nga ay sabi niya, sino daw siya para manghusga? So, kailangan fair lang. Yun na yung pagkatao. So, tuloy natin. Hindi natin napakinggan. Medyo na. Oops. Ayan, dito na tayo. Malapit na rin magtapos to So, ang final na nakupo ay si BBM. In-skip na po natin yung iba kasi masyadong mahaba. 6 hours.
We're back with the Deep Probe, the SMNI presidential candidates interview. And again, 1 hour went by so quickly. So we're down to the last question for our last candidate for the evening. To start off with our last question, Professor Carlos.
Okay, there is, I know, Mr. Marcos, that
Professor Carlos, I know you're gonna love me for this. You're wearing your sunglasses again.
Sorry again. Ay, mag-forgive na kayo, ha? You will all be 75 also. Unless you die young. I don't know. Humirit pa yan. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a sense that this will be the last time I shall interact with you in a venue like this. So, let me introduce something which I have tested in my class on elites in politics. And this involves moving into an area called predicting leadership decision making. So I hope you don't mind if I give you 3 short questions, but they are related to each other. And it will give our people a chance to know you in terms of your leadership style. The first question is, do you think that you're basically an optimist rather than a pessimist? Number 2, do you think you are basically a high-risk taker rather than a low-risk taker? You'll notice the 2 are related. And the third question is, do you think you are Machiavellian?
Well, the first question is if I'm an optimist or a pessimist. I'm essentially an optimist. And the reason I'm essentially an optimist, because especially when we talk about the country, we are optimists. I am optimistic because our biggest asset is the Filipino people, and I try to be very objective about it, ma'am. I have traveled all over the world. I have not met a better people than Filipinos in every possible. Am I a risk taker or not? When it comes to national issues, I tend towards a conservative only because a mistake will cost so much suffering to so many people. In other words, you have to be very careful with the decisions you make. And it's not something that you do offhand. You think about it very hard. You talk to as many people as you can. And you make absolutely certain that you have done everything that you can possibly do to make whatever your plan is, to make it work. Am I Machiavellian? Well, I've studied him quite thoroughly. And I know very many Machiavellians in my life. But
Is it Machiavelli in terms of taking every means to produce an end, not the other Machiavellian, the bad Machiavellian?
Well, certainly, we have to be aware of everything that is going to help whatever it is that you are hoping to achieve. And on a national scale, that means you have to understand very well what the situation is on the ground. Ganito kasi ang sitwasyon ng mga tao, eto na ngayon sila. Nasa gitna pa ng pandemya, walang trabaho yung mga yan. Umaasa pa rin yan sa tupad, sa IX, etc. O paano tayo lalabas niyan? Where will what are the other countries doing? Kailangan maging maingat So I suppose in the same sense, as you say, that these questions were related, it's a way of being careful and being very, very knowledgeable about what are the things that have to come into play so that you will achieve success, whatever that success, however you define that success. So in that sense, yes, ma'am, I am a Machiavellian.
Yeah, thank you. In future, if you have time, please come to the university and I will discuss with you. It's called the Operational Code Construct. Thank you very much.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So sorry, I know we were getting requests for extension, but we want to be strict about keeping it to 1 hour for all the presidential candidates. So Senator Marcos, you have the floor for your closing remarks.
Well, first of all, I thank again our panelists and SMNI for this opportunity to speak on the many issues that have yet to be explored. And the format as well, I think, is quite constructive. So thank you to SMNI for that. Thank you to our panelists here. I hope to continue to lay out what programs that form a part of the platform, the planks of the platform, for the possibility for the next administration, for the possibilities for the next administration. And that's why such opportunities such as this are very, very important. And I hope that we have been able to impart some of the ideas that I'm examining and trying to put together to bring to the next administration should I be elected to the presidency. So we hope that we continue with this discussion. I hope that people come and think about it. And if they have any ideas, please come and tell us because we need to hear from everyone. We need everyone. That is the cry of the unity team, is that we cannot say that anyone is not needed. Everyone is needed in this effort that we are trying to do to get through the pandemic, to recover our economy from the problems that the pandemic has brought, and to position the Philippines to face the new world order and what will happen in the next few years. So thank you all very much, and thank you for the opportunity. Magandang gabi po sa inyo.
Ayan. So diyan na nagtatapos ang ating pag-flex po sa the presidential interview ng SMNI, ang the deep probe rather, no, the deep probe, na kung saan isa-isa silang sumalang sa mga panelists at tinanong kung ano yung mga posisyon nila sa pagtaas ng gasolina, kung ano yung posisyon nila sa nangyayaring gera sa pagitan ng Ukraine at Russia, at kung paano nila susolusyonan ang nangyaring pandemya, kung paano tayo maka-recover. Ano? So, marami silang napag-usapan dyan at napakinggan natin yung mga aspirant, mga tumatakbo, na kung ano yung mga tugon nila dyan sa mga question ng mga panelists. So, ayan, malinaw na malinaw kung sino po yung nag-stand out dito sa interview na to. Siyempre, maraming pumalakpak po kay BBM. Kanyang mga sagot, no? Talagang pinaliwanag niya kung ano yung magiging solusyon at kung paano masusolusyonan ang bawat problema na kinakaharap ng bansa natin, lalong-lalo na po sa enerhiya, sa kuryente, no? Kung ano yung mga dapat buksan na mga makabagong technology, power plant, para hindi na maulit yung mga brownout. At bukas din siya sa pagtayo ng nuclear power plant. Kasi sa ibang bansa daw, ginagamit naman nila yan. At proven naman na nakakatulong sa kanilang bansa yan, nuclear. Dito lang kasi hindi natutuloy yung nuclear power plant dahil sa politika. Hindi daw sinusunod yung science, kundi pinupolitika yung bawat proyekto na gusto ng gobyerno para sa mga Pilipino. Instead na pakinabangan ng mga Pilipino, ang nakikinabang yung mga investor lang na gustong magpayaman lang. Yun lang gusto nila. Pero wala silang pakialam doon sa mga mahihirap. Kaya ang taas ng kuryente natin dito. Di ba? So, marami siyang nailatag na plataforma niya kung paano niya gagawin step by step, lalong-lalo na sa agriculture. Maganda yung sinabi niya na yung mga kabataan ay kailangan matuto na sa pagbubukid. Pero may mga modern naman tayong mga kakamitan na pwedeng gamitin nila. So, bakit hindi? At ang gobyerno mismo ang magbibigay ng mga gamit na yan, no? At kumbaga ilulun nila, no? Papahiramin sila ng gobyerno, pero hindi na ganun sa kalaki yung interest ay yung pagsingil sa kanila para hindi sila malugi. So magandang mga idea yun. At lalo na sa agriculture na yung mga kabataan na hindi marunong magtanim ng palay. Sa ngayon, no? Kasi lingid sa kaalaman nila na mahalaga sa ating pang-araw-araw yan, yung bigas. Dahil malakas tayong kumonsumo ng bigas o kanin. Nag-i-import nga tayo. Dati nag-i-export tayo. So, yun yung gustong baguhin ni BBM at i-improve yung agriculture. Kailangan ang magsasaka ang mas panalo. Hindi yung mga kapitalista. So, yun, hanggang dito na lamang guys. Thank you so much sa pagsama nyo sa akin in the past 2 hours. Thank you so much. And Mami Sun Explorer, kasi Irish Rookie. Thank you. This has been M1 Star Danny TV, and yours truly definitely saying goodbye, good night, and see you all again on Monday, same time and same channel. Bye-bye guys. Sayonara. God bless. Thank you so much. I love you all. Bye-bye, Ma'am Insan. Thank you.